Go live.
We're live on Vimeo, Facebook, and YouTube, according to Vimeo.
We are live. Let's see if I see us live. Hey, there we are actually. We are live. That is true. I see us. Well, welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. This is a whole new thing that we're working on. So up until this point, if you've watched the video, you have watched a recording of the video that gets produced and packaged and then streamed, typically on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. Last week, our release was on Friday. I was a little bit behind the schedule. We have been working incrementally over the last, I would say 4 months on a setup where we could record the radio version of the Outlaw Radio Show, but stream the recording of that live on the interwebs, on Facebook. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw, as well as our YouTube channel, which the easiest way to find it is outlawradio.live. This has been a long time coming. We're very excited about it. What this will enable us to do is, while the radio show, as well as the podcast, it's all pre-recorded, edited, packaged, released on a production schedule, the actual recording of the show will be live. And so hopefully we can integrate some of that real-time interactive element with you, the audience. So if you're on Facebook and you're seeing this, I am in the studio right now. As a matter of fact, I'm with Creighton, who's going to switch the camera angle here. He's working on it. Is he there?
Yeah, there we go.
So,
hi, everyone.
So there's Creighton. And so we've been working on this. It's been, like I said, a long time coming. We're excited about it. One of the things just in the progression, Creighton works a full-time job. Don't you, Creighton?
I sure do. Yeah, I am coming off of a 10-hour shift right now. I am exhausted and just a little nervous, but we're going to do it anyway.
Which makes it very exciting that you being very exhausted, we're going to decide to do something. So up until this point, Creighton, because he works a full-time job, only has so many nights of the week available to help me when it comes to production stuff. And throughout this pandemic, we very quickly had to switch at Calvary 316 to recording the Bible study in advance so that we could stream it on Sunday mornings. So we were typically doing that on Wednesday nights, which is why Creighton has not been in the Outlaw Radio Show, on the Outlaw Radio Show in a couple months. Again, just limited time, etc. But the plan right now is that moving forward, we're going to, because we've gone live at the church, we're now going to go live here with Outlaw Radio, and we're going to be doing this on Wednesday nights instead of Thursday. It's kind of the plan. We'll see how this goes. So if you're watching, we're kind of just giving some lead time, waiting to see is anybody. I've gotten a comment over here. Is anybody watching? Anybody? I don't see any comments yet. Whatnot? Do you see anything?
I don't see anything on Facebook. I need to pull it up on YouTube.
You got to speak louder though. You're going to have to project. I have not
seen anything on Facebook. I am looking on YouTube right now, and I think we might have been wrong about how
the YouTube worked.
Yes. So
we're probably streaming on Calvary 316's YouTube page.
I do believe so. I'm going to check that right now.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. We will figure that out moving forward. Creighton has multiple things that he's doing. Not only is he interacting with me, but he's also controlling the live stream, and he's controlling the video switcher. So Creighton, like, you go ahead and switch over to you.
Hello.
Yeah. So Creighton is wearing multiple hats now, and
that's my normal state of being when we're doing anything.
Absolutely. So again, let me just kind of recast. So we switch back. Am I on the camera?
Not yet.
Okay.
You are now.
I am now.
Also, will you pull me up in the sound? I'm a little low.
You're a little low in the sound?
I do believe so, yes.
Okay. I'll bump your audio up. So again, we are experimenting around here, trying out some different things. I'm controlling the audio, Creighton's controlling the video. And so the whole intention here is the Outlaw Radio Show is a radio show. We record 4 blocks of audio. We send those 4 blocks of audio to His Productions, Josh Brown, our brother, His Productions, rocking the swag. Josh takes those 4 blocks of audio and he produces them into a radio show. It's an hour-long show. And so because of the particular licensing agreements and regulations, there has to be station IDs and advertisements for the local stations at the top and half of the hour. So he takes the 4 blocks of audio and he produces it into basically 2 different MP3 files that then get sent out to our wonderful radio partners, who then place them accordingly in their production schedule. Once that's done, I take those 2 audio files, I put them back together as one continuous MP3, and that's what gets released as our podcast. This is the recording of all of that content. And so if you're listening on the radio, the production schedule means that the content you don't get probably till 2 or 3 weeks later. It's just the way that it is. This is not a live show. In that sense, if you consume Outlaw Radio via the podcast, it takes about a week, maybe 2 weeks before each episode hits the podcast. But you're going to actually be able to watch the recording of the Outlaw Radio Show and subsequent podcast in real time. And so this enables me to do really what I want the show to be, and that is a reflection, a commentary of things occurring in real time in our space today. And so this will enable us to do that in a very creative way. And so the Outlaw Radio Show is now actually in kind of 3 formats: radio, podcast, and video. Live video on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. With all that being said, it's at this point that we should probably start the show. We've got 4 blocks: 14 minutes, 12 minutes, 11 minutes, 9 minutes, and 45 seconds. Creighton and I will interact in the show itself. If you're watching online and you would like to submit a question or a comment, some feedback about what you're listening to, please drop that in the comment section. And then between each block, if you post something that's thought-provoking, something that Creighton feels is warranted to share, we will interact with you between each blocks at the halfway point, and then definitely at the end of the show. And so, with all that being said, you ready to do this?
I am, and he does mean that I'm the gatekeeper of all questions.
Yes. Well, Creighton's always been presented as the resident millennial observer, as the audience member. He represents you, and so he's actually literally doing that now. And so, if your question is nonsensical, it'll never make it to me. If it's nonsensical but funny, I'm sure we'll discuss it. So, with all that being said, you're gonna have to let me know again. This is all by the fly. I'm going to drop the music for the show. Here we go. I think it should be rolling. Maybe turn it up a little bit. We got a little bit of audio going. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. If you're local, let me invite you to be my guest one Sunday soon. Our service begins promptly at 10:30 a.m. If you aren't local, but let's say you're just looking for a good church, you can join us via our live stream digitally online. Again, Sunday, 10:30. The easiest way to find our service is you can go to facebook.com/Calvary316, or you can go to calvary316.live. So if you're local, come be our guest in person one Sunday soon. If you're not local, no big deal, no problem. Check out our live stream. I do hope wherever you're listening or however you're listening, whether you're listening to this show on one of our many wonderful radio partners. This is a nationally syndicated radio show across America. Quite an amazing thing. Whether you're listening to the show through our podcast, every episode is posted on Apple, Google, Spotify. We're working on getting it on the new platform that's been rolled out by Amazon Podcasting. Or you happen to be watching the recording of this live via outlawradio.live or the Outlaw Radio Facebook page, which is facebook.com/the Radio Outlaw. I do hope you stay with me as we seek to deconstruct the negative perception that the world has of Christians by boldly, honestly discussing today's relevant topics in an honest and genuine way. If you are a fan of the show, you've been listening for some time, I want to welcome back to the show my dear friend, Creighton Vaughn. Creighton, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It is always a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone out there. How y'all doing?
So most of the people are listening on the radio, and so when you're waving, they have no idea what you're doing. Why are you waving at a camera? What are we doing? In case somebody's listening on the radio or the podcast, what also are we doing presently?
Right now, we are both recording Outlaw Radio. We are recording the recording of Outlaw Radio, and we are live streaming the recording of Outlaw Radio.
So we have all kinds of things happening at the same time, expanding our reach and our platform, having fun while we do it. Creighton, I do need to tell you a pretty cool story. So one of the things about the radio, and even with the podcast, is that it's very difficult to have any kind of solid understanding about the scope or the reach of what we're doing. I've often joked that most of the time my audience is the refrigerator directly across from my microphone. And so I'm speaking to a refrigerator. I have no idea how many people listen to the show, what the scope, what the reach, what the impact is, which is why, hey, if you're listening and this show is a blessing, please reach out, contact us. We'll give you some contact information later. You can find all that, though, at outlawradio.org, which is our website. So a couple weeks ago, I went on vacation with my family over Labor Day weekend. We took the kids. They had the week off of school, and we decided to go to Hilton Head Beach, which was great. Vacation is always a good thing. And for us, my son Quincy will turn 9 in December. And so we're kind of figuring that we only have, maybe 10 guaranteed vacation slots with our family, which again, even when you have a soon to be 9-year-old, soon to be 6-year-old, soon to be 2-year-old, it's hard to think in those kind of macro terms. But for us, time is flying by, time is fleeting, and we want to make the most of the impact, the opportunity that we are able to make memories with our kids. And so we're kind of prioritizing making sure that we're able to go out of town to spend time at the beach as a family. And so we took a week, we went to Hilton Head, and I got this really cool tent that I was pretty stoked about. So if you go to the beach, if you go on vacation, what you need at the beach more than anything, and trust me, I am a sand, beach chair, give me a book, sun, I'll soak it up kind of fan. But you still need, especially with little ones, a tent. You need a tent of some kind. And if you've ever been in my situation, kind of the best option available has been those stupid 10 by 10 pop-up tents that are just terribly heavy. They make it to like 1, maybe 2 different beach trips. They corrode, and then if there's any wind, they will take off like a kite and roll down the beach, and they're dangerous. They're a scourge and just a pain when it comes to vacation. So I bought this cool tent that doesn't resist the wind. It actually works with the wind. And throughout the whole vacation, I had people coming up asking me about this tent, where I got it. It's kind of it's like a mystery, this Shimbui shade. Anyway,
hashtag non-spons.
Hashtag not a sponsor, can be a sponsor, reach out. Anyway, cool tent. My point is that on the last day we were there, Quincy and I, we go down like we do every morning. We put up the tent. We bring our chairs. We get ourselves set up. And then we go back up to the condo. Get Theodore, Mabel, Jessica. We get our cooler, get everything packed up, and then we come down. So we get the tent set up first in the morning, claim our spot on the beach. And while we were there, there was an older couple with a teenage son that had been there for a few days, but we hadn't had any interactions with them. And she walked up and she wanted to know about the tent. And so, I took some time, explained to her the tent, whatnot. This brought up a conversation. They happen to be from upstate New York, Rochester. We're exploring places to move because of the COVID restrictions and the limitations of liberty. A really, really cool story. These very sweet people. And she ended up asking me, what I do for a living. So I told her, I said, I pastor a church just outside of Athens, Georgia. Told her a little bit about Calvary 316. And then in the process, I also said that I have a nationally syndicated radio show. It's called Outlaw Radio, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't think anything of it. Quincy and I went back up, got the family, we came down. Well, about an hour or so later, she comes over to me and she says, Zach Adams, right? And I said, yeah, that's my name. She says, Outlaw Radio, right? I was like, yeah, for sure. She goes, well, I was texting a friend of mine back home in New York that I just had this really cool interaction with this down-to-earth conservative Christian, real world down-to-earth type of guy that has a radio show. And she said, well, what's the name of the radio show? And she was like, well, it's Outlaw Radio. And immediately her friend replied, is his name Zach Adams? And she was like, yes, actually it is Zach Adams. And so she sent a link to the podcast to this lady at the beach, and she pulled up the icon, the photo, and it's my ugly face. I have a face for radio. And sure enough, she put the connection. So she listened to one of the episodes and she came over to tell me about it. And so it was, Jessica looked at me like, are you kidding me? Like we're in Hilton Head and we had this random conversation with someone from Rochester, New York, who then reaches out to a friend about this encounter, who is a fan of the show, listens to the show. And now they happen to hopefully be listening as well. And so you never know the scope of what you do and the impact that it's making. And so I just want to thank the audience for being a blessing to me and my family, for listening. I know that there's not everything that I say that you're going to agree with, and that's okay. Christians get the bad rap of being monolithic. We're not a cult in the sense that we aren't allowed to think freely, to think for ourselves, to challenge. The Bible says, study to show yourself approved under God, that there is an iron sharpening iron, that we're to ask questions. The Bereans in the book of Acts were commended for the fact that even with the Apostle Paul, they just didn't take what he said at face value, but they opened the scriptures for themselves. They took what he said, and then they studied and they checked it with the authoritative word of God, and tested to see if it was heresy or the truth, if it was something they could get behind or needed to reject. And so again, Christians get a bad rap because we're accused of being monolithic, that we're accused of groupthink, and yet that is not the case. I hope this show, beyond everything else we hope to accomplish, challenges you to think, to expand your reference points. I have a list of things I was going to talk about today, and this is an easy segue into something that actually ties into my beach vacation, but it was last on my list. And that is the way that we consume news and information. Creighton, when it comes to your consumption of news, I know in the past you've often said that you have not been a news junkie, and yet over the last 6 or 7 months, you've become one. You've become more engaged in social affairs than you maybe ever have wanted to. Where do you get your news, like consume your information?
So I'm definitely more engaged than I ever wanted to be. And I get all of my news from YouTube and or Reddit. But I have to filter everything from Reddit through a sieve because there's a lot of junk in there. But it's basically like I see things on Reddit and then I look for them on YouTube to see what is actually happening.
So those are your two main sources of information. It's Reddit, which is the cesspool of the internet.
Yes. And
whatever piques your interest on Reddit, you then go to YouTube. Are there any particular people on YouTube that you go to that you feel as though that you trust? Obviously, aside from the Outlaw Radio Show, which is where you get most of your information.
Yes, there are a few. I really like Steven Crowder, Michael Knowles, and Ben Shapiro, who are all relatively conservative YouTube voices who also tend to get major pushback from liberals whenever they're speaking publicly, which those videos are also fantastic to watch. But they also are all very intelligent. You might be able to describe them better than I can for people who generally watch old media. because I literally know them as YouTube personalities.
So for you, when it comes to your consumption of news, you're not consuming news from like traditional media. You're not consuming news from the old newspaper, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Washington Journal. You're getting your information about the world through people that you have kind of individualized and picked. You've chosen to let them be voices and kind of filters by which you process the world and what's going on.
Absolutely. I actually didn't get into the political news stuff at all because I was interested in the political news stuff. I got into it because I liked Steven Crowder and I thought it was funny. And then when I'd watched 10 or 15 of his videos just for the laughs, I ended up being like, oh, I agree with him on a lot of things. And apparently a lot of people don't. And now I have to deal with this.
And that became a problem.
Yes. Because boy, do they disagree with him on just like him and me on a lot of things that are now things that I actually care about, which is annoying because now I have to worry about them.
It's one of those, the old Matrix line where the guy, kind of the villain, ends up saying, he's talking to Mr. Anderson at dinner and he's like, ignorance is bliss. Like if I can just remain ignorant, I don't have to deal with these things. But as soon as I'm enlightened, as soon as I'm starting to engage, I get sucked into the fact that I now definitely have to care, right?
Yes, that is exactly what happened. It just became a thing that like now I'm hearing, like I'm actually hearing the liberal or leftist stuff in other media that I watch, whereas before it would just fly over my head and I wouldn't care. Now I have to hear it, and then I have to understand why they're saying that. Now I have to be able to argue against it if I disagree or decide whether I disagree. So yeah, I get all of my stuff from personalities on YouTube that I like for their personality.
See, I think that is one of the big differences between older generations and younger generations. Well, we are running against a hard break. Don't go anywhere. You've been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. So I made a total rookie mistake, and because we're actually videoing and we're live, there was no way for me to parachute out. We started that entire section, the first block, and I forgot to. So if you're watching, I have just here to my left, your right, my iPad set up with a timer so that it tells me exactly where we are, because I have to be specific on 14 minutes, 12 minutes, 11 minutes, 9 minutes, and 45 seconds. Yeah, I got through the intro and realized I had not pressed start.
Oh, no.
And so I just, as we were riffing here, assumed that I probably maybe ate up 2 minutes. So I won't know if I totally messed this up until the production, but that's okay. That's why we work with Josh Brown at his productions, because he is a professional and he can cover over a multitude of sins.
He definitely is the professional in our group.
He is the professional. Literally, he's actually the professional. I just saw Matt Fisher.
Yeah, I saw that.
Matt Fisher popped up. Matt, love you, brother. Creighton was waving at no one. Now he's waving
now
at
I'm
the
waving
camera.
At the camera. Hi, Matt.
Matt Fisher is our brother from another mother. Matt, we go way back. I miss you. You need to call me. We need to catch up. Been praying for you last time we talked. Been praying for you. Anyway, so here we are. We're going to kind of pick up the whole thought here. We're going to continue an interesting discussion. I have a direction, but this block is 12 minutes, and so we're going to go for it. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm talking about how we consume news, how we consume information. So a little bit of my own backstory. I have, as long as I can ever remember, and my parents laugh about this, my mom makes fun of me of this, I've always been a news junkie. Like, I've always enjoyed the feeling of being connected, of knowing what's going on within the world, as far back as I can remember. Maybe it was that I would always go to the newspapers to find out the Braves score, pre-internet. But I've always enjoyed being current when it comes to world affairs. When I was in Bible college, one of the big challenges, and so I was in Bible college 2001 through 2003. So at best, you had like AOL or Hotmail. We weren't super connected as far as the internet goes. At least I wasn't at the time. But it was a challenge because by design, we called it the Calvary Chapel Bible Bubble. We were basically isolated from the world around us. We didn't have access to a lot of information of the outside world. We didn't have television. We didn't have great internet access. We were, for the most part, just oblivious, which became a challenge because 3 weeks into my first semester, September 11th happened. And I remember getting a phone call from my dad telling me what was going on. It wasn't until like 3 days later that a group of us hitchhiked down to a Chili's that I saw the first images of September 11th. That was 3 days later. So I've always been a news junkie. And as soon as I was internet connected, as soon as I started a job, I had my own computer. Email was a vital part of your life. Again, this is still before the iPhone. A friend of mine that I had done some work for off and on at a pool company, a guy by the name of Glenn, always on his desktop, he had this website. It was the Drudge Report. Not a very well-built website. Has never changed since it was launched. Very to the point. And what Matt Drudge of the Drudge Report, all it is he filters the news and he just creates headlines that are links to the actual original article. And so it's really, you go to the Drudge Report and it's Matt Drudge ciphering, filtering, compiling the news for you. That was fine because I didn't have time to run and go to all these different websites to read all these different articles. I could just go to one web page, the Drudge Report, and basically everything that was important was posted there. Was a huge Drudge Report fan, big consumer of the Drudge Report. It became my homepage when I got my first computer. I would go to the Drudge Report, like many of you, multiple times a day, because he was constantly refreshing. Every 2 minutes, the page would refresh. Things would move around. The most important stories would be at the top. Big breaking news would have these little GIF sirens that just look terrible, but he was breaking news, breaking stories, and it was one place you could go to always feel like you were engaged, connected. You knew you were in the know. Now the Drudge Report was huge, and it was huge because Matt Drudge had a knack for breaking big stories. Matt Drudge, the Drudge Report, was my main source of news for 15 years, for a long time, all the way up until 2016. Now, Matt Drudge was one of the first mainstream guys, and I say mainstream guys because he kind of sets the tone for the mainstream media, although he's very eccentric type individual. In fact, like his influence is so big. If you're a Rush Limbaugh fan, and if you ever watch or see an image or a video clip of Rush Limbaugh behind the golden EIB microphone, if you see his desktop behind him, the Drudge Report's always on it. Matt Drudge has that type of a scope, that type of a reach. Matt Drudge was one of the first people that got on the Trump train. I mean, big time. Was a big Donald Trump supporter. Even when the mainstream media thought this was just a fad, when all of the GOP establishment, the elites, thought this will go away, Matt Drudge was the guy after each debate had his own online poll where you would see Fox News and CNN and MSNBC. They would have their polls that would show Jeb Bush won or Carly Fiorina did well or whatever, and it was Matt Drudge that would always have like 96% of people thought Donald Trump won. Like he was driving the Trump train and giving a lot of legitimacy. Now, I was curious about Matt Drudge, mainly because over the last, I would say 2 years, something has happened to the Drudge Report to the point that it has become left and not conservative, and has become very starkly anti-Donald Trump. Surprisingly so. To the point that you would go and kind of just get angry at what you were reading, because it's like, aren't you on the same team? Now, I got to a point where I was done. Like so many people, I read a recent stat that August of this year, he's lost like 30 million subscribers from the year before. Like a third of all of his web traffic has disappeared because he's turned off his base. The people that relied on him for their news feed, no longer liking what he was feeding, just decided to turn him off. And we've gone to other news sources. I haven't been to the Drudge Report in a year and a half. Anyway, I bring this up because I was really curious about this phenomenon. I was talking to a friend of mine who was like, well, I mean, maybe he just changed his mind. And I was like, that's fine. And I mean, Matt Drudge is allowed to change his mind. And there were rumors that he sold the Drudge Report and somebody else was running it, but no one could know about it because obviously if you knew Matt Drudge wasn't behind it anymore, you wouldn't go to it. You wouldn't trust it. And there was all kinds of rumors and theories. So I bought a book for vacation called The Drudge Revolution. Matt Drudge doesn't do interviews, is a recluse, but this guy compiled kind of an unofficial biography of Matt Drudge from talking to the people that know Matt Drudge. Andrew Breitbart was an early contributor to the Drudge Report for years, handled the 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock shift. He was the one adding links and adding data to the website. Charlie Hurt, another guy, was also very heavily involved. He was neighbors with Ann Coulter, who they've since had a falling out. So I wanted to try to expand my understanding of Matt Drudge, and in the process of this, and this is not an episode on Drudge. This is a much larger episode. It dawned on me that shame on me, really, because what I had done without really knowing it or thinking it through, I had allowed the way I view the world, the way I view politics, the way I view current affairs, the way I view things happening in America, both domestically, within the courts. I had allowed my entire worldview to be bookended by one guy. It was the only place that I went for news. I would watch Fox News, but in a lot of ways it just regurgitated Drudge talking points. I would listen to Rush Limbaugh, but in a lot of ways Rush Limbaugh was getting his news also from Matt Drudge. Matt Drudge controlled the narrative. And that's a big thing. I feel like today we don't get news, we get narratives. And they're two different things. News, as far as in its purity, journalism, is to report facts and let you make the decision about what you want to do with those facts, how you see those facts, how you read those facts. But we don't have news anymore. Everything is commentary. Even Fox, Brett Baer, who claims to be the big news guy, it's so slanted. Everything has commentary to it. Nothing is just giving you the facts and the figures. And even then, the facts and the figures are slanted in their internals. A great example of this is, do you honestly believe the polls that you're reading? The polls that are saying, the recent poll that nationally Donald Trump is down 16 points. You really believe that? Because we were told that at the exact same time in 2016 that there was no way Donald Trump was going to win. Hillary was up by 16 points. It was a landslide. And they were completely wrong. Do you honestly believe that the polls make any sense at all? And in fact, you get these headlines from the polls, and then if you actually go into the internals, you see how they're heavily weighted towards Democrats and not Republicans, meaning that the assumption of the pollster is that there will be more Democrats turning out for the election to vote than Republicans. But if you just look at the world, which side of the aisle seems to have the momentum? You have Donald Trump doing a campaign rally, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are showing up, waiting in the rain. There is enthusiasm, there's excitement, there's zeal. Trump was at Walter Reed this past weekend, and there were people that showed up outside of Walter Reed in mass to let the president know that they loved him. Joe Biden does a debate. He does a press conference or a rally, and there's 12 people there. It was funny, the line in the presidential debate where Biden tried to rip Trump for having these rallies, and Trump shot back you don't do them because you wouldn't have anybody show up. The enthusiasm is definitely on the Republican side. I think that's obvious, and yet you get these polls. And it's all to slant opinion. It's all to morph the way that you're viewing things. There's a documentary on Facebook, on Netflix right now called The Social Dilemma that delves in big time with how Facebook and Twitter and these online platforms, Google, are specifically tracking and learning everything that there is to learn about you in order to tailor everything you get online, your experience online, to what you want, not necessarily what is. And it dawned on me that like I had done this to myself. I had allowed through all my 20s and most of my 30s to allow one guy, this homosexual, recluse, crazy person, to tell me what was going on in the world, Matt Drudge. And it's like, shame on me. Like, shame on me. Like, that's a problem. And the reason I want to bring this up is that as a Christian, like, don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of narrative over news. Now, how do you get to the news? How do you get to the actual facts and figures? Like, how do you filter this? How do we deal with this? Well, I'm going to deal with that in the next block. But the point is if you're going to only one source, you're limiting yourself to that one source. They're controlling how you're seeing things, how you're viewing things. And as Christians, yes, we tend to fall down on the conservative side of the aisle. That's true. But we've got to expand our exposure so that we're not mindless noobs being controlled by a narrative. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of the Outlaw Radio Show. What's up?
I just love your use of the word noob there.
I was searching for a word.
It was a good one.
It's what I landed on. But it is true, though, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, I like a few liberal YouTubers as well, so I try and balance it that way, but still I'm mostly comedy based in my news. But yeah, I totally agree that no matter where you're getting your stuff, if you're getting it all from one source, you have a problem on your hands.
Yes. Let's do this. Next block.
Let's go.
11 minutes. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm talking about the news and really a bit of a confession. Big Drudge Report fan, have been very irritated with the Drudge Report because of its leftist slant, its anti-Trump bias, definitely seeping through. You can read all kinds of theories about it. I highly doubt Matt Drudge has sold. Matt Drudge is a narcissist. The only thing Matt Drudge actually cares about is the Drudge Report. He only cares about clicks. Matt Drudge's heyday was the Obama administration because he could be countercultural. He realized that when Trump got elected, that he was no longer countercultural. I think that there is a desire on the part of Matt Drudge for the Democrats to take back power, so he's relevant again. I don't think he cares about anything other than himself. That's my humble opinion. But going to one place for your news isn't wise. The question then becomes, well, where do we get our news? Like, where do we go to get sources that we can trust? I'm a news junkie. I admitted that in the previous block. To my wife's chagrin, I enjoy watching Fox News. I enjoy watching the news. I can't stomach the communist news network, CNN. I have no interest in watching Rachel Maddow or Al Sharpton say anything. The ABC, NBC, the Peacock. I don't care about them. It is true that we often like news sources that reaffirm our positions that we're not angry with. I used to enjoy the show on Fox called The Five, 4 conservatives and 1 liberal. It was Bob Beckel for years, and I like Bob Beckel. I didn't agree with him on much, but he always seemed fair. He always seemed that his positions were thought out, even though I disagreed. He was transparent, I guess that. But I can't watch the show now because of the liberal that they have. Juan Williams just drives me absolutely crazy. I just turn it off. Like anytime that there's a show on Fox that they have this liberal come up to give the other side, it irritates me. And that's not necessarily a good thing. That's where we are in this country. Like this hyper partisanism, it's not healthy, and it's driving a lot of the divide. I say that with a grain of salt because what's driving the divide is the divide. Like when people are like, we just need to get along. Like, why can't we just come together? Well, I mean, how do you come together on big issues? Like for example, like did Obama come together with the Republicans to figure out a healthcare remedy? No. He had a supermajority which means he had 60 votes in the Senate. He had control of the House of Representatives, and he rammed down Obamacare with not one single Republican vote or input. Like, was healthcare a bipartisan remedy? No, not at all, which is why healthcare is now worse than it's ever been. And there's no remedy in sight because it's completely divided upon partisan lines. Like, there has been no working together. Where do we meet in the middle when it comes to abortion? Like, if you're, if you're pro-life, like what commonality do I have with a political party whose platform says it's okay to abort a baby all the way up until it's born? And then even then, if it was decided to be aborted but somehow survived, it can't have medical care. Like, where do we meet in the middle there? Like, so there's a divide because there's a divide. But as Christians and how we consume information, we need to be very careful that we don't allow the narrative to supersede the reality of what's actually happening. Now, for better or for worse, my remedy to this. So again, the Drudge Report, going back to it, it was Matt Drudge scanning the interwebs, the www.worlds of information, and then putting on his page links to what he thought was important. Various news sources, various authors, various commentators, etc. Well, it dawned on me, like, I don't need Matt Drudge to do that. Like, I can actually create my own Drudge Report. Like, I can create my own news feed. And how can you do that? For better, for worse, and you might agree or disagree, I've landed on Twitter because Twitter allows me to pick and choose who I want to follow or not follow. Like, I control the content. Like, and I'm very particular on that. Like, if there's an advertisement in my Twitter feed, I immediately block it. Like, I block the account, so I never see it again. If there is somebody retweet something I don't like, I block that, so I never see it again. Like, I have full control. I've blocked almost 12,000 accounts. That's true. Josh Brown just crossed the 10,000 mark. It's kind of become a game for us. But I can control what news I want to consume. And so there are liberals in my feed. There are conservatives in my feed. There is a wide array of varying opinions, but I only pick and choose those people I feel like are honest and are sincere in their opinion and are not just spouting or regurgitating talking points they get from either political party. I want free thinkers. And that's my exhortation, whether it's Twitter or some other way, or you pick, 4 or 5 different websites that you're going to frequent every day. I've got a good friend of mine, one of the elders in the church. That's what he does every day. Like, there's 5 or 6 different websites that he goes to and he feels like he's picking and choosing. I just do that in my Twitter feed. But my point is, Christian, news over narrative. Don't fall in the trap of allowing big tech or pundits to control how you see the world. Creighton, you have anything that you want to add to this before I segue?
Just that I totally agree. I try and do the same thing with my YouTube. I have 4 or 5 different people that I watch on either side of the aisle that often talk about the same things from the opposite sides. And it works for me.
The point is, when it's all said and done, figure out a way to do it. But realize, if you're only getting your news from Sean Hannity, you're not getting the news. And God bless him. I like Sean Hannity. But if you're only getting the news from Sean Hannity, then you're only seeing the world through the eyes of Sean Hannity. If you only get your news through Rush Limbaugh, that's not good. God bless his soul. I'm a big Rush fan, a ditto head. But you got to expand. Again, news over narrative. This is one of my favorite times of the year because it is like we are neck deep in the national pastime, and that is baseball. Like, we are in the heart of the playoffs. If you've listened to the show for any extended period of time, you know that I am a diehard Atlanta Braves fan. And why shouldn't I? Born and raised in Atlanta, grew up a Braves fan, watching Dale Murphy and Bob Horner. And then 1991, was watching that famous game against the Pirates in the NLCS. Had to go to bed. My dad made me go to bed, but he said, I promise I'll come wake you up if anything exciting happens. I was 8 years old. And sure enough, my dad comes and wakes me up, and I watched that last inning where Cabrera gets the hit into center field. Vance Slyke throws it to the plate. Sid Bream comes in. Braves win, Braves win. David Justice tackles him like I love the Braves. Maddox and Smoltz and Glavine and Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones. Like, by the way, people are like, Chipper Jones, Chipper Jones won one World Series. He won one World Series his rookie year, which technically wasn't his rookie year because his rookie year he blew out his knee. He was not a leader on the team. He never won another World Series. Now, Chipper Jones is a great ball player, greatest switch hitter ever, but he wasn't a leader, and he's one of the reasons the Braves have not won a World Series since 1995. Him and the fact that Bobby Cox is a terrible postseason manager, greatest regular season manager ever, not so much with the postseason. Anyway, I digress. I'm a big baseball fan, and we are in the middle of the playoffs, and I just felt like I was watching the game today, just thinking about what I wanted to talk about on the show, and I wanted to kind of point out one of the interesting things about baseball, and why I appreciate it so much. And that is the fact that baseball is a game of failure. Like, it is a game of failure. You will fail in baseball much more than you succeed. I'll just give you an easy example of this. If you strike out 2 at-bats and get a base hit the 3rd at-bat, and you repeat that, every 2 at-bats you get out, every 3rd at-bat you get a single. At the end of the year, you will be batting .333. And if you do that over the course of your career, so you fail 2 out of 3 times, you will be a Hall of Famer. You will be one of the best baseball players ever. Like, it is a game based upon learning how to deal with failure. Every pitcher has ebbs and flows in their season. I mean, you got 1 or 2 guys that just are dominant all the time. But even then, there's the outing. It's the rough start where you just came out and you didn't have your, and you have to deal with failure. Listening to Tom Glavine, one of the greatest pitchers ever, Tom Glavine always said that pitching, what makes you a good pitcher, is how you handle adversity. He says you'll go out one game and you'll have your stuff. You'll go out another game and not have anything working. It's the 3rd game that you go out and you have to just labor. You don't have it. You got 1 or 2 pitches. The other pitch isn't working. You got to keep going to it. You've got to endure. You've got to persevere. I want to build on this idea, but before we reach a break, I do want to just share with you very quickly some contact information. You can find all of this, by the way, at outlawradio.org. We want to hear from you, the listening audience. Our email address is info@outlawradio.org. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. Our Twitter, the show Twitter, our handle is radio_outlaw. My personal handle is Zach, ZACH_Adams. You can watch the show, outlawradio.live. We podcast every episode on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Again, you can find all this at outlawradio.org.
So for those of us who are not political junkies, what exactly is a ditto head?
A ditto head. I don't exactly know well, so if you say ditto,
like, it means same, or
I agree.
Right.
You said it well. I ditto that. For whatever reason, I guess Rush Limbaugh he's coined the phrase that he refers to his audience sometimes as ditto heads because they agree with him.
Huh. All right. Just
Which
wondering.
the more I'm thinking about it is kind of like the more insulting it actually comes across. Like the reference of the audience is being like, yeah, you guys are ditto heads. You just agree with everything I say.
Right. It's kind of like he's just calling his audience clones, which I feel like is not a great way to refer to your audience. Seems derogatory.
But reinforces the entire point of the first half of the show, the point that I was making.
Yes, it does.
Hey, let's finish up. We got 9 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's do this. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. Talking about baseball. It's October. We're in the heart of the playoff season. Hopefully, when you listen to this, if it's the radio or the podcast, the Braves are still playing. Presently, we're up 2 games against the Marlins. I don't see any problems with the Marlins. I am worried about the Dodgers, so I am a Padres fan presently, hoping the Padres knock off the Dodgers, because if the Braves play the Dodgers, there are a bunch of Calvary Chapel guys that I'm friends with that are on the West Coast that I will get lots of grief from, aka David Guzik, who is a diehard Dodger fan. Anyway, baseball, it's unique because it teaches you how to deal with adversity. You lose more than you win. In hitting, if you get one hit every 3 times, you bat 333, which means that you're a really good hitter. You fail twice as much as you succeed, and you're the best hitter ever. So it's an interesting game. I could talk baseball all day long. It's also bizarre that it's the one game where it's the defense that has the ball. There's no other sport in the world where the defense is the one that actually has the ball. In regards to the game itself, every team, this is a unique thing about baseball, every team in the league wins 1 out of every 3 games. Every team. Even the worst team in the league will win 1 out of every 3 games. Beyond that, every team in the league, best team to worst team, will lose 1 out of every 3 games. So every team wins a game. Every team loses a game. What separates the best teams from the worst teams are what you do in the 3rd game, which is why, again, the Atlanta hero, Bobby Cox, for us, our longtime manager, he always preached win the series. Win the series. So if it's a 3-game series, take 2 out of 3. If it's a 4-game series, win 3, at least split. Don't lose series. And if you win series, you'll win your division. You'll be in the playoffs. So baseball, it's a game of endurance, a game of adversity, a game of triumphing over affliction. Baseball is such a teaching game. So I was a middle infielder in my heyday. Played second base, shortstop. I caught some. But in playing the middle infield, there was the inevitable occasion when a ground ball gets hit your direction, and in spite of all of the fundamentals, you're in front of it, your gloves down, and you boot it. You duff it. It goes through your legs. You don't field it cleanly. You make an error. Now, for me, it would get in my head. I would get so upset that I made a mistake. So upset that I had done something wrong. So upset that I didn't play up to my own expectation of myself. That what always happens anytime, if you've ever played baseball, you make an error, what is bound to happen that same inning? The ball will get hit right back at you. It's just this dirty thing about baseball. If you make an error, the ball will find you again. And for me, I would get so in my head, so worked up, so upset that I had booted a ball, that ball gets hit to me again. And what's going to happen? I'm going to make another error. And then it's circular. I'm more upset. I'm more frustrated. I'm more in my head. Ball gets hit again, and it just snowballs. It ends up being a terrible inning. My dad, who coached me for years, and again, my dad, it was one of the ways that he spent time with us, was that he coached us in baseball, softball, basketball, whatever sports we were playing. My dad was always involved with our sports. Because he used it not just as an easy way to relate, because my dad's athletic and loves sports, but he used it as a teaching thing forever. And I do this with the teams that I coach with Quincy and Theo. We have 3 T's, the 3 T's: think, try, and team. Like, no matter what, you're always thinking. Like, the best muscle you have in your body is your brain. And baseball's a game that you have to think. You got to think, where do I throw it? What's the count? What's the best situation? I need to be aware of what's happening around me. And then you got to try your best. Like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make errors, but you always run on the field. You always run off the field. You always try your best. You're going to fail. Baseball is a game of failure, but you have to try. You have to give it your all. And if you win, you lose, you can tip your cap. You can walk off the field knowing you did your best, even if your best wasn't good enough. And then it's all about team. Baseball is the consummate team game. I mean, it's one of those sports where, yes, it might be true that the pitcher makes a tremendous influence, but you can have a great pitcher, and if the defense is terrible, he's a sinker baller, and he's getting ground balls that should be easy outs. But if he doesn't have a good defense behind him, yeah, his earned run average might be low, but he loses the game. And the goal is to win the game. You got to have a good catcher, but like, no one position dominates. It's a team game. You got to work together. It's funny, people say there's no I in team. Well, yeah, there's me, but you got to move it around. But baseball is one of those, you got to work as a team. You got to learn to work together. You got to learn to support each other. Lots of lessons. But when I was in the infield and I would boot a baseball and I'd get in my head, my dad would yell out this phrase. He would say, Zach, put it behind and make up your mind. And what he meant by that and how it was explained is that in that moment where I have failed, I can't dwell on that. I can't get consumed by that. I can't get beaten up by that. I can't let that get into my head. I got to acknowledge I made an error. And then I got to let go of it and focus instead on not making another error, because errors compound. Errors snowball. Mistakes grow. So I've got to put it behind and then now make up my mind of what the remedy is. I've got to take a breath. I've got to reevaluate my fundamentals. What caused me to make this mistake? What do I need to do to remedy it so I don't do it again? Put it behind and make up your mind. I bring this up because it's so apt, so applicable to life. Life is one of those things that I really do think, even for the Christian, you're going to fail way more than you succeed. Even in your Christian walk, no matter your intention, while it may be good, failure is inevitable. We were born with a fallen nature. Even though we've been regenerated, filled with the Holy Spirit, we still battle against the flesh, the remnants of this fallen programming. We wrestle with it. The Bible wouldn't speak so much about the battle with the flesh if it wasn't a battle, and if it wasn't that we would succumb to it more often than not. The Apostle Paul, who second to Jesus was probably the greatest Christian ever, right? The further he got in his walk with God, the more he was aware of his own frailty, his own fallenness. I'm a sinner. Man, I am a big sinner. By the end of his life, he's I'm the chief of all sinners. You're going to fail, friend. But that's where grace comes in. Because it's in the moment of failure. You want to not fail again. You want to learn from it and you want to grow from it. And so when you fail, you need to take a step back in the sense of God still loves me. I'm still righteous in heaven. And while Satan might beat his condemnation drum, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Old things pass away. Put it behind. All things are becoming new. Make up your mind. Baseball. It's a game of failure. Life is a game of you're going to fail. It's what you do when you fail that matters. Do you let it snowball? Do you let it get you down? Do you bow out of the race? Or do you remember, I'm saved by grace? It's his ableness and not mine. It's his faithfulness and not mine. Friend, get up and get running again. Well, you've been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. Creighton, thanks for being with me.
Always a pleasure. Love being here. Hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. If you like what you heard, I want to encourage you to contact your local Christian radio station. Thank them that they're carrying the Outlaw Radio Show in your community. If you're listening through our podcast and not your local Christian radio station, call your Christian radio station and say they should be carrying Outlaw Radio. We offer it for free. You can listen to every episode on our podcast. It's available on Apple, Google, Spotify. You can also watch the show as we record it live. outlawradio.live is the easy way to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do want to hear from you. outlawradio.org is our website. You can find all of our contact information there. As always, props to DJ Dust for the incredible music in our show. A sincere thanks to my partner in crime, my brother, Mr. Josh Brown, his incredible staff at His Productions. Once again, my name is Zach Adams. I hope you join me again this time next week for more of the Outlaw Radio Show. What's up?
I was going to try and get you to plug the live stream at the end of that.
I did. I threw in the live stream.
Okay, I must have missed it.
You must not have been listening.
I must have been thinking about something else.
I should have rolled out the music. I could have rolled out the music. I'll do that at the end of
this.
Yeah.
It's funny. I probably first heard you talk about the shortstop, put it behind and make up your mind thing. What, 20 years ago? when I was maybe not 20 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago. So I was somewhere between 10 and 15. And I legitimately think about it every time that I do something and my mind's like, oh, and I think about you and I think about your dad on the baseball field every time.
Isn't it such a, like it's easy to get in your own head, and we're going to banter back and forth. So you're going to have to be quick with that button over there.
Yeah. I'm working on it.
There'll be no auto. You'll have to like cut real fast. But yeah, I mean, it's so easy. That's why that Scott Cunningham song, I am free, that bridge, you know, when the devil beats his condemnation drum, you know, I will plead the blood, my voice is heard, you know, my Lord will have the final word. It's so important because we're going to fail. We're going to fail. You know, we were talking about it this past Sunday, that I think one of the greatest unforced errors of Christianity is the accusation that Christians are hypocrites. Like, of all of the things Christians should never be accused of being, it's being hypocrites. Because like the message of the gospel is that we're failures saved by God's grace, carried forth through God's grace. Like that I am a sinner saved by grace.
Right. We have an easy out. We can just say, yeah, I messed up. Of course I messed up. The whole point I'm as a Christian is because I'm aware that I messed up.
And I have the Holy Spirit, which means I can, like, my status with God did, like it, like we have peace through grace. That's the only way we have peace is through grace. There is no peace without grace. If our peace with God was based upon our works or our merit or our deservingness, we could never feel as though we've ever been good enough. Like we would always be left in limbo. We'd always be wondering if we're going to get yanked off the field and cut from the team. You know, it's like the accusation that Christians are hypocrites is just an unforced error. Like if you're like Paul and you're like, I'm the chiefest of sinners, and then you sin, like how can someone accuse you of being fake? Like I've been completely real. It's what I love about Calvary 316. I feel like we're like, you know, there's a difference between being an honest, real Christian and a carnal Christian. And I don't ever want to tiptoe into the, you know, the grace so I can do anything heresy. But at the same time, there is something refreshing about being involved in a community of people that has the appropriate expectations on you, which is you're a failure.
Right.
So like when you fail, it's like, shocker. So, okay, now what do you do when you fail?
I mean, you repent, you apologize to people that you hurt because you almost certainly hurt people.
And you're transparent.
And you move forward and be better or try.
Like the worst thing you can be in the Christian experience is fake. Because now you're not even being honest. If you can't be honest, then you're not real. And I don't know. Again, the great unforced error of Christianity is that we're hypocrites when like we should be more upfront about like, hey, the only thing that makes me different from anybody else is the grace of God. I'm as much of a failure as everybody else. I'm as much of a sinner as everybody else. I'm as much deserving of hell as everybody else. The only difference between me and everybody else is that I had enough wisdom to accept what Jesus did on the cross on my behalf and to try to abide by that and let that influence the way that I live. It's the only difference.
It also makes the message of grace clearer to people who don't quite understand what it is when the people who are talking about grace are like, this is the things that I need grace for.
Right, for sure. Well, hey, there's a presidential debate, vice presidential debate, presidential debate. It could be a presidential debate. Kamala Harris, right? I mean, who really thinks Joe Biden will live through his first term?
Not Joe Biden.
Not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. So, you know, we did this without any advertisement or letting anybody know we were doing this to try to work out the kinks. And I think this was a success. So we'll start promoting it and try to get an audience to join us.
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, this worked though. I think this is totally doable.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we had a good day.
We had a good day. It's at this point we're going to rock the music and we are going to slowly begin to shut this down.
See y'all.
God bless.